Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings from our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. My name is Terry McVenes, the President and CEO of RTCA. Welcome to all of you to what is now our 21st in a series of webinars, Aviation Technology Connect. 2 years ago, we created this series of webinars to serve as a catalyst to bring forth some timely visibility of significant issues that are impacting our aviation stakeholders. And during this time, we've heard from a variety of aviation industry leaders, including the FAA administrator, chairman of the NTSB, and other technical leaders in our industry. We've discussed government aviation policy, infrastructure, and some of the technical challenges we are facing today and in the future. Our goal was and continues to be to educate you, the audience, further inspire you in your profession, and perhaps even evolve your thinking as to where the industry is today and where it's going in the future. Now, all of our previous webinars were recorded, as is this one. So if you want to go back and listen to any of our previous webinars, you can find those recordings on the RTCA YouTube channel. I know many of you watching are familiar with RTCA, but with the large audience that we have today, we undoubtedly have some first-time visitors. So I want to just take a moment to familiarize you with who we are. RTCA is an aviation-centered safety standards development organization whose mission is to inspire the creation and the implementation of integrated performance standards that meet the changing global aviation environment and further ensure the safety, the security, sustainability, and the overall health of the aviation ecosystem. Now, in addition to developing standards, we also provide training to government and industry personnel on the application of those standards and developing the basis for both certification and testing. And on the screen, you can see a few of our upcoming training events coming this September. Our safety management system course is becoming extremely popular, especially for some of the new entrants and the new enterprises that are coming into the aviation industry. We also have our airworthiness certification, airworthiness security certification course, and our courses on DO-178C and DO-160G coming up in September. And then in October, we're going to again be offering our newest course, The Role of Human Factors in Flight Deck Design and Certification. Now, after 2 years of development and in collaboration with government and industry recognized human factors experts and teaming up with Georgia Tech University, we're excited about this latest addition to the RTCA catalog of training classes. We first offered this course back in June, well received by those who participated in the class. And we're also in the process of scheduling some additional offerings of our human factors course later this year and into next year as well. So you can sign up for any of these courses via our website at www.rtca.org. If you're interested or have any questions about our training, our standards development work, or are interested in becoming part of the RTCA family of members so that you too can have a voice in developing performance standards that are so critical to the safety of our industry, you can contact us directly through our website or via telephone. Now, our ability to bring you these webinars would not be possible without the generous sponsorships from our industry partners. And today I'm especially thankful to the Airline Pilots Association, Collins Aerospace, and the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, who are our gold sponsor, corporate sponsors this year. And also sponsoring today's webinar is Garmin International. Now on this platform, you're going to be able to submit questions to our panelists today. And to do so, just click on the Q&A tab and we'll do our best to get all of your questions answered. So let's get started. I'm really pleased to have with me today two of the great icons in our industry, Mr. Ed Bolen, who's the President and Chief Executive Officer of the National Business Aviation Association, and his Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Steve Brown, both of whom, by the way, have had terms as Chairman of the Board at RTCA. In Steve's case, he's been Chairman of our board since July of 2018 and been my boss since my arrival at RTCA back in November of 2018. So gentlemen, thank you for joining me today and being a part of our webinar series.
Thank you, Terry.
I'm really excited to have both of you with me today, as you've both been such longtime supporters of our organization, as well as bringing significant influence and direction to our industry. And Ed, I just read where you've completed your 19th year now as President and CEO of MBAA. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Steve, after a fabulous career, not only at MBAA, but also at the FAA and the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. You've announced your retirement later this year. So I'm sure you're going to have some wonderful insights about our industry to share with our audience. And at the end of our discussion, I'm going to ask both Ed and Steve to share with all of you a few takeaways that they'd like to leave with you. But Ed, let's start with you. I want to first start and have you share with us, our audience, just some background on NBAA, your purpose, mission, and who it is that you represent.
Well, thank you, Terry. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank the world of you and RTCA, and really appreciate you bringing the community together in so many different ways, including with today's webinar. This is an exciting time for NBAA. We are 75 years old this year, so an important celebration. We were founded shortly after World War II. The idea at the time was there were a lot of companies that relied on general aviation aircraft for business purposes. They needed to reach hard to reach areas. They needed to do things that weren't accommodated by any other mode of transportation. And 75 years ago, they recognized that on-demand air mobility, the need to get people where they need to be, when they need to be there, was important for companies in the United States and important for our nation's economy and transportation system. So NBA was created 75 years ago for the purpose of creating an environment, fostering an environment that allows business aviation to thrive in the United States and around the world. So that's our mission, that's our purpose, and today we have over 10,000 members.
Wow, that's a pretty broad constituency base. What are some of the organizational priorities that you have right now to address some of the challenges that we're facing both today and in the future?
Well, it hasn't really changed as dramatically as you might think since 75 years ago in 1947 when we were created. The goal is first safety. We knew back then, in order for business aviation to thrive, we had to be safe and be perceived to be safe. So safety is always the priority one. In addition to that, recognizing that we needed to be professional. That meant an ability to recruit, attract, retain the best and brightest, be able to give them the tools to operate safely, securely, professionally. And we were also created to ensure access to airports, to airspace, to make sure that this mode of on-demand air mobility could get people where they needed to go. And so utilizing the 5,000 public use airports in the United States was key then, and it continues to be key today. Of course, through the years, all of those things have changed, evolved. So what it takes to be safe or secure, to attract, retain talent, the focus, of course, we then talked about efficiency. We now focus more on the word sustainability, bringing in innovation and facilitating those technologies. That's all part of why we were established and why we continue today to pursue our mission by focusing on those areas.
You've got a professional development program as part of your portfolio of work. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Well, we recognize that people need tools to grow as leaders, to become not just subject matter experts, but to be able to truly be a professional. And so we have, for a long time, had programs related to what we call our certified aviation manager, ways where people can study and ultimately go through an accredited program to allow themselves to be able to be called certified aviation manager. So that's a number of programs that build up to a broad-based recognition. More recently, we've been expanding that to do different certifications, but we're also moving forward with an exciting new accredited program for sustainable flight department. So there is a recognition that professionalism, growing one's leadership capacity, the ability to bring in and then distribute best practices and understanding are fundamental to helping the community advance.
And Terry, I'll add quickly that one of the most notable things that we've done and invested in terms of a capability for our members is a learning management system that allows them to consume everything that Ed talked about remotely, when they can. If they happen to be between flights or on a layover, they can consume it in 1 hour, 2 hour chunks. We make it available in person as well at our live events, from conventions to regional events, but it's now available really at the press of a button, and that's been a dramatic advance and benefit for our members.
Great. You mentioned safety is kind of one of being your key priorities, and it's certainly been one of my passions for most of my career. What areas of safety do you think are you really focusing on? I think certainly loss of control in flight is one that the entire industry is working on. Are there others that you're focusing on with the business community?
Well, we follow closely the NTSB most wanted list. We certainly spend a lot of time working with the general aviation community on our equivalent of the CAS system. So many people are aware of this as the GA part of that. So we try to address those issues. Not surprisingly, the issues that are big for all of aviation are big for us as well. We try to focus on human factors, including fatigue. I think an issue that is increasingly coming to the forefront, which I think is important, is mental health. So there are a variety of issues that at times reflect what is happening in the broader community and the environment, but also learning from where there have been problems and finding the right ways to move forward on being predictive in the way we address it and focus on things like safety management systems.
Some of your constituents are, I came primarily from the Part 121 world where it's 2 pilot crews but some of the folks that are flying in business aviation, they're single pilot operations. I know you've got some emphasis on helping improve those sort of safety operations as well for the single pilot.
Steve, maybe you want to address some of that since you've been intimate in all of that. But just to go back, Terry, yes, the use of any general aviation aircraft for a business purpose. Those are our members, and what we're seeing is that a lot of people are flying themselves in single engine pistons, and certainly single pilot operations have been approved and are utilized safely by owner operators up through a number of turbine powered aircraft. So this is a big part of who we are.
Yeah, it's a unique part of our value proposition, Terry. I mean, we, as you noted, the airlines are a crew environment, and we very much work hard to specialize in the best practices for single pilot operations, which are, a huge component of the operations in the airspace system. And the workloads that exist for a crew, the workloads for a single pilot can be significant, especially when they're accentuated by weather and other environmental conditions. So it's an area we pride ourselves on in trying to lead and provide the very best information we can for all operators.
Great, I really applaud you for that. Kind of related, a lot of discussions of late about new modes of propulsion, whether it's hybrid electric, hydrogen. What are some of the things you're working on in that space?
Well, certainly the advances in technology are providing amazing opportunities. If you go back over the history of business aviation, general aviation, we've done it in biplanes, in monoplanes. We've done it with fixed wing, with rotor wing. We've done it with radials, pistons, and turbines. We've done it with fabric, we've done it with aluminum, we've done it with composites. Technologies emerge, and we have an opportunity to capture that to give us more opportunities to get people where they need to be when they need to be there. I think the exciting things that we're seeing now with distributed electric propulsion, the whole advanced air mobility opportunities are exciting. We've got rapid advances in batteries, great hybrid propulsion systems being discussed, hydrogen future being discussed. So there's lots of opportunities. For us, we're very focused on the operational side of these issues, making sure that we have an infrastructure that is going to be prepared for these types of operations. So NBAA, working through its Advanced Air Mobility Roundtable, has been involved in comments to the FAA on vertiports. We've been involved in legislation to allow for planning and construction grants. We've worked very closely with companies to be able to understand their needs and help facilitate that, not just across the FAA, but across all the different departments within the United States. So it's a very exciting time. We feel like we're on the cusp of something really transformative, and we're committed to making sure that happens as soon as possible and as safely as possible.
On that subject of advanced air mobility, Ed, you and I are both part of that summit over at the White House a couple of weeks ago on the topic, and clearly it's something that's a priority for this administration. Any takeaways you took from that summit?
Well, I think a couple of things. The fact that we had a summit at the White House on advanced air mobility is a key thing. It basically recognizes that these technologies are important to our nation's economy. They're important to our transportation system. They can be important to our national security. And that the message from that was, this is something that is really positive. And we need to find ways that make it happen, to do so safely, securely, to ensure there's broad-based excitement and acceptance of it. The fact that we had the White House demonstrating support for this emerging technology, I think is really key. And that was really a significant result of that particular summit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've had a number of conversations since the summit with some of our members, some of our non-members, but just talking about what went on there and trying to, I think it's going to really be up to the industry now to really keep pushing forward on this topic, because it's clearly is the future. There's so many, so many great benefits that are going to come out of it for, the traveling public, as well as for our economic benefits. So I'm really excited about it too. So, and you mentioned too that I think you've obviously been very supportive of legislation, one that was passed by the House earlier, I think back in June, and so getting that is going to be very important too, to get not just the administration but also the legislative bodies involved too.
Yeah, obviously, transportation involves regulators, elected officials, international, federal, state, local, and it involves the community. So there's a lot of work to do, but there is a growing awareness and a lot of excitement about the potential for leveraging the new technologies to make all of us more mobile, more sustainable, to provide more equity to the system. It really is an exciting time.
Yeah, it really is. One of the things I've learned in my career is that if you're going to make an organization successful, you can't do it by yourself. You really have to be partnering with others. Who does MBA all partner with in helping to drive our industry forward and make MBA more successful in your constituents?
Well, one of our enduring relationships has been RTCA. So let me begin there by recognize the kind of unique ability that RTCA has to bring people together in a spirit of collaboration, cooperation. I think it's really our entire ecosystem coming together to advance, not one over the other, but to advance together and really recognize all that. Beyond that, obviously, there are a number of opportunities to work in the government on ARC's Next Gen Advisory Committee, all of those things that are government related, which are very important. But there are also a number of other working groups that take place. And so we're constantly involved, whether it's MITRE, Transportation Research Board, or industry groups, where we believe very much in a community approach to solving problems, looking for ways that we can all advance together, not looking for ways to divide the community against each other.
Exactly.
Well, and Terry, as you might expect, not a day, sometimes it seems like an hour, doesn't go by that we aren't working closely with all of our allied general aviation associations. So whether that's the Helicopter Association or GAMA or AOPA or a range of others, we work very closely with them, both tactically and strategically.
And I'll just take a minute with Steve there. Obviously, he's chair of RTCA and been very involved there. He's also been involved with the Aviation University groups and others. So Steve has been very active and involved with a number of broad-based groups to promote safety, to attract people to our industry and other efforts as well.
Well, Steve, you have had an amazing career with stops at AOPA, FAA, and now MBAA. Walk us through some of the highlights. What were some of the most memorable things of your career?
Well, it really falls into two buckets. It's the people and it's the issues. Both are memorable in many different ways. When I started out, and you can appreciate this, Terry, 45 years ago, there was really no such thing as civil GPS. It was all VORs and NDBs, and people today don't even focus on NDBs. We're decommissioning them, just like I'm being decommissioned. So it's been a really fascinating journey, not just from a technological point of view and all the capabilities we've developed over the years, the standards it required, the regulatory approach that was required. But I think, as we all appreciate, people in our industry are just extremely passionate about everything we do. And because of that, you come up and encounter a great number of really unique personalities that are really smart people with wonderful capabilities. And as much as I'll probably remember the various issues and campaigns, the reality is it's the people that you've collaborated with to create change that are probably the deepest and most positive memories that we all have. But certainly that'll be true for me.
Both of you. Recently, there a gentleman who I know you both know, John O'Brien, who also served as a RTCA board member. He wrote has written kind of a history of RTCA from, like, I think 1997 to 2007, and both of your names are all over that history book. And John was a good friend and mentor of mine early in my career as well. And so I think back in terms of kind of back what we were talking earlier about the role of collaboration and working with others to help people be successful and help our industry be successful is to your point, Steve. I think it's just really some of the most memorable things that keep us going forward. Steve, I know you and I have talked about this in the past. During the events of 9/11, you were, I believe, the FAA's Associate Administrator for Air Traffic Services. You had your hands full for a few days. Want to tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, I got a new job that day. I had been hired 3 years earlier to operationally managed the U.S. airspace and the air traffic control system. And, that was largely a technical job to make sure that not only did it run smoothly every day, but that we were modernizing it at the same time, making big investments on time to make it a much better system with greater capacity. But that day, literally within an hour, my job became a national security job. And yeah, it's not a background I had. I didn't have a background really in security. But for the ensuing months in trying to fully reopen the airspace, I found myself working frequently with Don Rumsfeld, Secretary of Defense, Richard Clark, the director of the NSC. I spent quite a few days over at the White House, some of them in the Situation Room with Vice President Cheney and other cabinet members. And my essential task was to argue for how we could more fully open the airspace without restriction and get it back to what we knew pre 9/11 in an environment where that whole structure favored more restrictions to enhance security. And they certainly were very skilled at advancing the idea of additional security and additional restrictions. And so I was one of those advocates for how we could go from where we were, which was a difficult, challenging, and horrible situation, to where our national economy could thrive again with aviation as its foundation. And we could experience the unique freedoms that we have in the United States with aviation, the kind of flying we can do, with the regulatory structure we have, the kind of manufacturing we have is just second to none in terms of our ability to grow and prosper using aviation as a key tool. So that really was the challenge that lasted for most of a year after 9/11. And then thankfully for my final 2 years, I got back to my original job, which was to really just grow the system and improve its attributes during the time I was there. So it was a challenging and wonderful 6 years. And I'm immensely grateful to the administrators that I served with and all my colleagues there for that opportunity.
Great. I know you got some great stories about that week. I think we probably all do. We all were impacted one way or another. So it was quite the experience. I think we all found ourselves doing things we never thought we'd be doing again. As you say, we all kind of became security, responsible for security on top of things that I know I learned a lot about security in those first few days myself. So,
Terry, just before you go on, let me go back and just say what I've said before, but I really want to underscore. It'd be impossible to overstate how important Steve Brown was to civil aviation through that crisis. This was a time when the security group came in and they wanted security and didn't look to find ways to balance any other national priorities. You'll recall that DCA was immediately closed, and there were a number of people in the security world that thought it should be closed permanently. But with someone in the room that had a deep understanding of the aviation system, how it worked, appreciation for what it meant to all corners of the country and its economy, Steve was a constant advocate. And I think often about how in aviation, safety is our fundamental value, but it's not safety at the expense of air mobility, it's safe air mobility. And what Steve did was be able to introduce to the security world, it is safe and secure air mobility. And that was really just a critical part. And we all needed to have someone in the room when it happened. And our person in the room was Steve Brown. And that's not for general aviation or business aviation, that's for all aviation.
Very well put, Ed. I couldn't agree more. That's fabulous. Steve, any lessons learned, key insights about aviation that you'd like to leave with the audience as you look back on your career?
Well, at the end of the day, I think it's probably the way we all feel. I just wish I could have gotten smarter faster and done more. as a result. We all, are on a learning journey our entire lives, hopefully. And, my formative years with the Texas Aeronautics Commission and AOPA were just fabulous. I had so many great mentors and so many learning opportunities. And I've tried to continue to learn all along the way. Certainly that was the case as we discussed at FAA. But I can say that probably the punchline for me has been that what really has enriched my working years has been the people that I've been privileged to work with, the collaborators, the people like John O'Brien that you spoke about, who, we encounter and have the opportunity to work with so many visionary leaders who are leading such important stakeholders that it's just an unbelievable opportunity. I know one we all cherish.
Yeah. There's a question I always ask anybody is usually right before they're getting ready to retire. What would you have done differently? Or would you have even gotten involved in aviation in the first place? If knowing what you know today, what would you have done different?
I can't answer that question, Terry. I've thought about it. I mean, it's all been so wonderful. I think I would have liked to have spent more time. I only spent about 3 years actually working as a professional pilot in a 135 environment, flying almost every day. I loved that immensely. In fact, if it wasn't for my age, they might hire me now. There's such a shortage. I keep hoping that I'll get into the attractive group again. I don't know. But just flying every day and interacting with passengers was just spectacular. And I, didn't look forward to going to a desk job necessarily. So I might have spent more time in the cockpit and gone to a desk job a little later. But other than that, it's all been wonderful.
Yeah. So Ed, you brought it up in terms of what we went through and having somebody like Steve in the room during 9/11. We've just been through another, called it a black swan event with COVID. A lot of similar issues, but it was a different sort of challenge for the industry. Any perspectives in terms of comparing what we went through with COVID versus 9/11?
Well, I think sometimes in a crisis, you see the professionals at the FAA rising to the challenge and really demonstrating a level of commitment and excellence that's amazing, particularly in an environment where there are so many unknown unknowns. And so on 9/11, we had a situation where we immediately needed to bring the planes down. And, on that day, at that time, we were able to bring all the aircraft safely onto the ground. And it was an event that all of us who have had the fortune to see gone from away have seen how special that was, regardless of where people landed and how the FAA in particular, but the country as a whole, rose to the occasion. I think looking at the pandemic and the challenges COVID has created in terms of the stress it has put on the workforce and operations, we had to find a way to remind ourselves how to operate with ATC 0 situations. We had to find ways to extend medicals, to extend training, to operate, but operate safely. And all of that with a less than perfect understanding of the challenge we were fully up against and what that meant in terms of people's willingness to trust in being part of the aviation system, and then making sure when they trusted being part of the aviation system that they were able to conduct the movements safely. So in both times, I think the challenge is immense, but that gives the professionals in our industry a chance to come forward with solutions that find a way to manage risk and allow us to do things that maybe we didn't even think were possible.
Steve, anything to add?
Well, there's a lot of parallels in that analogy, Terry, because the public health officials and government, for me, in looking at it, functioned very much like the security establishment did on 9/11. As Ed said, when there's a crisis and people have to react quickly with their best instincts because it's a unique crisis, that's what the public health authorities did. And so the challenge always becomes, how do you bring the pendulum back to the middle when it swings out to either side? And in both cases, and I'm sure with any future crisis, that'll continue to be the public policy challenge, is how do you achieve that as rapidly as possible and maximize the use of industry knowledge and American ingenuity to make sure that we do it in the very best way we can.
In looking around the world and how some of the other regulators handled, the aviation regulators handled the pandemic, that I'd agree with you. The FAA really took the lead and did the right thing. Unlike some countries where they probably stumbled a little bit on the topic, but hats off to the FAA and stepping up and providing that leadership that helped put some common sense into keeping our transportation system working. Got one question from the audience, kind of related. Are you concerned about another kind of 9/11 event through, say, a cyber attack? Anything the NBA is doing in terms of cybersecurity?
Well, what NBAA does, we're a on one floor of one office building in Washington, D.C. So we don't have all of the answers. But what we have through the years been able to do is call upon community experts, industry experts to come together to share best practices and then be involved in distributing that. I think with cybersecurity, as we are all learning every day, whether it's us operating with our smartphones, our office computer systems, or seeing some of the attacks, clearly cybersecurity is a major issue for every country, every company, and every individual. And that's true also of industries, including aviation. So making sure we can get our arms around what the challenge is and be able to have the appropriate interventions is a continuous challenge. And no one can suggest that we have this conquered or we've solved the riddle, because the challenges keep getting bigger. And so our ability to evolve and adapt grows higher. But cybersecurity is recognized as a significant threat to all of us, and working together to address that is really important.
I'd like to pivot just a little bit towards a look at the future. Let's start legislatively. Got a new Congress coming in November, like we do every couple of years. And early next year, there's going to be a lot of talk about a new FAA reauthorization bill that's going to be on the table. What are some of the priorities for MBAA for the reauthorization bill?
Well, it will, of course, be safety. Safe operations. Will look for opportunities to promote innovation, sustainability, attract and retain diverse talent. So workforce will be key. And we also are focused on issues like trying to ensure that an individual doesn't give up their right to privacy just because they have boarded a general aviation aircraft. I think we'll all be focused on issues like 5G and ways that we can evolve and adapt our technology. I think we'll also want to, look at issues that if we find ourselves in something like a government shutdown, we're able to find ways to continue to operate as we move forward. Certainly, we want to ensure that we're constantly evolving and adapting the air transportation system so that we can have more efficient operations constantly and welcome in those two new technologies that we've been talking about. So it is really, it's an important time. The legislation, the reauthorization comes at an important time in aviation's history. And, there will be new and different challenges. The one thing that we know is that the top Democrat on the Transportation Infrastructure Committee, Peter DeFazio, has announced his retirement. So there we see a change in some of the personnel that will be looking at it. And there are changes taking place in the Senate as well with different committee assignments. So, every year is new, but this is a 5-year reauthorization bill that is coming to an end. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to find ways to work together so that we can make sure we ensure that the FAA has the tools that it needs to evolve and adapt to the rapidly changing environment.
You mentioned the big advancements in new technologies, and I mean they're really impacting our industry, and they're coming at us at a very rapid pace. How do we think about those new advancements in technology? What should we be thinking about? What considerations do we need to deploy to address some of these new technologies? Obviously, making sure they're done safely, but is there more?
Well, I think we need to make sure we understand the technologies, and a lot of the understanding is going to be resident in the industry itself. So finding ways to leverage the industry expertise and provide those regulations that are predictable, clear, understandable, and really allow us to meet the requirement of the goal of the regulations, and look at opportunities to leverage the expertise that is part of, relevant to, and inherent in the industries itself. So whether that's looking at the electric motors, looking at some of the other technologies, and understanding there are things that we can do to leverage that.
Terry, I'll add quickly, and this is an area where RTCA is doing a lot of really valuable work, is with the advancement in battery technology. One of the things we're trying to get ahead of is local communities' reaction to vehicles they've never seen before, probably in taking off and landing in places that they're not used to seeing them operate, and trying to get some broad public education that results in acceptance and learning about these capabilities rather than just kind of a knee-jerk, opposition to it. So all of the things that Ed touched on with regard to infrastructure and outreach, our regional representatives and directors are working hard with local government and state government to try to prepare the landscape for what's going to be, for us as aviation people, really exciting operations, but ones that these folks don't study every day and haven't really anticipated in the way that all of us can.
Yeah. I think one of the observations after going through the 5G situation the last couple of years is we have to be working together on all of these issues you brought up at the developmental phase rather than during the implementation phase. Because we're trying to do it during the implementation phase, like we saw with 5G, it gets really difficult and people aren't prepared. And so having those conversations, working together with whatever the industry is early on, I think is key to one of the keys to that success.
Yeah, and just touching on that, Terry, that's an example where I think our industry was very aware and working on it for a long time, but there was a disconnect on who we need to be communicating with, and I think that's you were right to say the industry, whatever or however that's defined, because in that case it was a broader industry than just the aviation industry, and I think we'll constantly see ourselves needing to work with new and different parts of industry.
Exactly. We as an industry really take a lot of pride at to be on the forefront of innovation, and we certainly made a lot of strides in that. And along the way, it created, the safest mode of transportation in the world. Beyond some of the things you already mentioned, what's it going to take to continue to move our industry forward? And maybe even to saying, okay, when we think about the future, who's actually going to define what the future looks like, and who's going to be there to help solve some of those challenges of moving us forward?
Well, I think one of the things about aviation is that the industry is constantly focused on getting better all the time, because we've been an industry that has been trying to do hard things very well and attain perfection. So whether it's safety, as we discussed, it's kind of amazing that we defy gravity every day, and it's the safest mode of transportation there is. But we've also been focused on efficiency. We've looked for ways to go further, to go faster, but to do it in a very efficient way. So efficiency is part of it. We've been working for a long time at reducing our noise footprint, for example. Those technologies that make us safer, more efficient, quieter, all those things are generally there and things we've been pursuing. Sometimes we focus on different words at different times, but at the end of the day, we're always working toward perfection. And all of those ways that we try to promote and foster an environment that allows business aviation to thrive forces us to be safe, secure, sustainable, innovative, and to have a workforce that includes the best and the brightest.
One question came in from our audience. I think it's a good one. Do you also look at pushing the FAA to move to a more performance-based oversight rather than just sticking to what's historically been done?
Well, I'll start and say it's a myth that they have not employed performance management. It might not be to the degree of maturity that maybe some private sector companies have, for obvious reasons. Government serves many stakeholders, not just sometimes narrow set of owners and stakeholders in a private company. But particularly, I can speak from an air traffic control point of view. FAA has been on a performance journey with very clear measures for over 2 decades, and they're getting better at it all the time. I think they're more transparent as they go. And so while, like any organization, they're not perfect and they can always improve, certainly they've been on that journey and they're making progress every year. And that's true beyond just air traffic. It's true in the aviation safety group and a range of others.
But I think what your initial question is, do you support performance-based? And Steve is suggesting we, of course, support that. We want it, we need it. To do anything else doesn't make sense. So we constantly encourage performance-based, and with the FAA, we always feel like go further, go faster. But we've got new technologies, and we need to draw on industry to understand what the performance is and how it gets us better. And we've seen this happen with challenges in the past, where can you do extended range twin engine operations? What do you need to get there? And the FAA has worked with the data to be able to find the answer, so we could go from 4 engines to 2 engines and things like that. But the technologies, as we've all discussed, are advancing rapidly, and it's imperative that we demonstrate leadership, demonstrate an ability to embrace innovation, and to continue to do it safely. So, we have got to get better at what we're doing. The FAA has got to get better. And I think that's the commitment we all make. We all need to be chasing perfection.
So you all have a upcoming annual convention, an exhibition this fall. Tell us a little bit about it. Where is it? When is it? And, what's going to be the focus?
Well, the NBA Business Aviation Convention and Exhibition will take place in Orlando, October 18, 19, and 20. This is one of business aviation's great events, but also one of aviation's great events. It's the largest, in fact, purely civil aviation convention in the world. Our focus will be all the things that we have just discussed. We will be celebrating the technologies, the products, the services, and the people that make our industry so compelling. There will be a lot of focus on sustainability, including sustainable aviation fuel, electric propulsion, hybrid propulsion, hydrogen propulsion, the advanced air mobility, UAS, all of those things will, of course, be a focus. Safety will be, as it always is, a huge part of what we're doing. We're going to start, you mentioned single pilot operations. We'll have a single pilot safety stand down, a lot of safety programming through the week, and a national safety forum to take place as well. So safety will be front and center. Workforce is always a big issue as well. This is an opportunity to help us inspire people to open their hearts, fire their imagination. So we'll have a number of inspirational speakers and also opportunities, what we call NBA Connect, to put a new generation and connect them to our industry. That the workforce issue, the safety issue, sustainability, innovation, all of that is going to be on display, and it will be great to have government officials, the press, industry leaders, all discussing ways we can work together to move forward toward that perfection that we've talked about earlier.
Terry, it's also fun. We hope to see you there.
On my calendar.
A lot of long days and hard work, but it's the best week of the year for us.
Great. Well, at the beginning of this webinar, I told our audience that I was going to have you provide them with some clear takeaways from the discussions, something they can take back to their workplace in the quest of their continued enhancements in their role as an industry professional. So a little bit of a lightning round, 60 seconds each. Give me and the audience 2 to 3 points you'd like to leave them with. Steve, you go first.
Well, I guess I'd say, looking back, over the years, things have become more complex in many ways, maybe not just technically, but societally. There's so many elements that come into a conversation, in the aviation community, and with great progress comes great challenges. So I think the real challenge for all future leaders in this dynamic industry really is to try and stay focused on the central task. It's easy to get diverted to sometimes tangential issues and spend more time on them than necessary. But, giving the imperatives that we have for growth, service to the economy and the nation, and all of our citizens, as Ed has said, for the safest form of transportation. We've really got to have very clear vision and a very clear commitment to the central goals we're pursuing, and stay intently focused on that and measure our progress.
Ed?
Well, I would say 2 key things. One, be involved and engaged. We see that people who give their time to community efforts like RTCA, like NBAA committees, they make a difference. They make the industry better. And that's essential for us. Not only do they make us better, they make the individuals better. They give them an opportunity to grow and contribute and provide a purpose. So being engaged in organizations, doing the professional development is very important. I would also say, get others engaged. One of the biggest issues about whether or not we are going to reach our full potential as an industry is our ability to attract, develop, and retain new people into our industry, which means we can't say, oh, at work, people like talking about aviation, but I'm not going to talk about it when I get home. Aviation is spectacular, and we need to all be ambassadors. We all need to be mentors. We need to bring people into our industry and share with them the magic that takes place when you are able to go from point A to point B safely, securely, sustainably. It's really an exciting opportunity for all of us to be part of this. Let's be engaged.
By the way, MBAA has a fantastic website, and I urge everyone to take a look at it. www.mbaa.org. A wealth of information, not only about MBAA, but tools that pilots and flight departments, administrators, safety personnel can utilize in their day-to-day business. And so even if you're not directly involved with business aviation, you can find a ton of things that are applicable to your part of the aviation community. It's just a great website. And I have to say that NBA is a real top shelf organization. It's making valuable contributions to our industry. I commend you both for all that you're doing as leaders and have done as leaders, so thank you. Great discussion. Thank you, Ed and Steve. Always fascinating to speak with each of you, both individually and in a setting like this. As usual, I learned a lot. I know our audience did as well, and thank you for your participation. I also have to give a special shout out to Steve. You brought me into RTCA almost 4 years ago. And I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but you've been a wonderful leader, a fantastic mentor, and a friend to me. I'll always treasure the time that we've had and the opportunity to spend time with you and how we were able to lead RTCA well, together and make it the organization it is today. So, Steve, thank you so much.
Well, Terry, thanks for the collaboration.
Again, I want to take a moment. Thanks to all of our sponsors for today's webinar, the Airline Pilots Association, Collins Aerospace, the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, who are our gold corporate sponsors this year, and to Garmin for sponsoring today's webinar. For the audience, thank you for joining us. I hope you found today's presentation and discussion both educational and inspiring and even evolving. And again, these webinars are being recorded. So if you want to review anything presented today or to review any of our past webinars, you can do so by going to the RTCA YouTube channel. It's been a fantastic discussion on a really important organization as part of our industry. But I also would be remiss if I did not give one more shout out and plug to our new Human Factors course, that's scheduled for October 25th through the 27th. This is being presented in conjunction with Georgia Tech University. It's a 3-day course going to provide a practical application of human factors engineering for any personnel that are involved in the management of engineering, the operations of aircraft, and other places. So again, you can sign up for this course or any of our other courses at our www.rtca.org. I also want to let you know that we're teaming up with our partners over at EuroK to present a 2-day virtual symposium on the future of spectrum compatibility. This international summit is going to bring together some experts from the industry and from government to explore how aviation standards and safety methodologies are going to have to evolve to remain aligned with future spectrum allocations and use cases. The applications of frequency spectrum, you heard it today, these applications are going to play a huge role in the advancements of new technology and infrastructure, not only for aviation, but for those tangential industries that are going to be making up the aviation ecosystem. We're going to have some more details on this symposium at a later date, but for now, mark your calendars for November 15th and 16th for this important event. I hope you'll all be able to join us for our next webinar, which will be held next month in September, where we'll have another fabulous discussion about a timely topic of interest to the aviation community. Thank you again for all being here and for making RTCA a part of your day.